Morning Focus, the show you can trust to tell all sides of the story. Clare FM.
The Limerick Writers' Centre and Midwest Regional Drugs and Alcohol Forum has announced the launch of Frontline Voices, a powerful new collection that shines a light on the essential work being carried out with vulnerable populations across the Midwest region and beyond. To find out more about it, I'm joined now by Michael Lacey, who's living in Lisdoon, Varna and is chairperson of Midwestern Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum. Michael, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
You're welcome.
Frontline Voices being described as a powerful new collection. Can you explain what the project is and how it came about?
Okay, well, the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum, we call it the Forum. In other parts of the country, they call it the task forces, but Forum is more community-based. And we comprise of voluntary, statutory and community individuals who come together to address the issues of drug, alcohol and mental health in the Western community. And our process is based on collaboration, emphatic solidarity, participative democracy, in that we don't invite people from the community in and state that this has been decided. We make decisions together. We are funded by the Department of Health. Now, I have to say, we welcome the funding, but they're not necessarily based on participative democracy, more on central democracy, where they listen to the experts. They don't necessarily listen to the community. That's the Midwest Forum. Now, the Limerick Writers are a non-voluntary community group who encourage writing and literature developed in the Limerick region. So we had an awareness week some years ago, 10 years ago, and rather than have a day handing out leaflets and lectures on addiction, we decided to have a poetry competition where we got people impacted by addiction directly and indirectly, and we had a poetry competition. That worked out very well, and I think you interviewed us on that about 10 years ago, and we had voices from the cave. As a result of that was very successful. Our next publication was in partnership with the Rice Group, and we had free voices, and that was voices from people who are in prison. That was very successful. So our latest book, Frontline Voices, are an anthology and collection of poems and stories by people working in frontline, Garda, social workers, psychotherapists, and so on, and community, statutory and voluntary people.
Do you think, Michael, with some frontline workers often operate out of the spotlight, what do you think the wider public misunderstands perhaps about the work they do?
Well, often Garda are just seen as enforcing the law, but during COVID, I was on the National Oversight Committee with the for the reducing harm, sport and recovery, implementing the drug strategy. And Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll, a wonderful man, passed away in 2024, and he really experienced what was happening on the ground as a Garda, all the social issues. They were acting during COVID. They were the only people working on the ground as such, as well as some outreach workers experiencing suicide, domestic violence, drug addiction, mental health issues. And they sort of very much been conscientized by what was happening. And in the anthology, we have a wonderful piece by Dr. Andrew Lacey, who is no relation to me, who's a superintendent. And in his piece, he says, in the offices of the HSE Midwest and the corridors of the Garda station, something beautiful began to unfold. The artificial boundaries that once separated agency started to blur, replaced by bridges built from shared purposes. The vulnerable people of Limerick had always existed in the space between services, too complex for any single agency to address. human to be reduced to bureaucratic categories. A person's mental health crisis doesn't check boxes marked police matters or health matters. They simply hurt, and they need to help that transcends organisational charts. And in the Midwest, there is a community access support team where, as the guard says, instead of coming with enforcers or handcuffs, they came with an understanding, empathetic hand to try to understand. And the guards working in partnership with mental health workers and social workers, etc. And that's the aim, to create that type of environment.
I just wonder, yes, Michael, whether you think hearing these stories can perhaps influence how community services or policymakers respond to issues such as addiction and vulnerability, that can have a positive influence in that regard. Absolutely. That would be the aim. There is a tendency for the powers to be to listen to the experts. Now, the experts are not necessarily the academics. Like, reality determines consciousness, really. What happens on the ground? And it's the experience. If you the knowledge of, say, for example, nurses, public health nurses, who are working on the ground, listening to people, although the nature of their work is very task-oriented and hierarchical, matriarchal, and they're not necessarily encouraged to reflect, but they have wonderful experiences and tales to tell, as Garda do. Often there's a story by this guard. He goes to in the book. He goes on to address a burglary in Galway, and he goes and he meets this lady who's in terrible disarray as a result of addiction, and he drops his Garda shield as such and sits down and engages with her and starts telling her about himself. And he had an alcohol problem, and she was very bewildered, but it struck a chord with her and it led her on a path of recovery. It's a wonderful, moving story, you know. Yeah, and the stories are all about the human touch. Like, as people in authority, it can be difficult. It's often said the mortal human dressed in a slight attire of authority can do things that make angels cringe. But the person under the cloak of authority can do very positive things, can have a huge impact on individuals' life and steer them in directions. Yeah,
I've worked... Yes.
I would imagine, Michael, it means quite a bit for the frontline workers themselves to have their experiences acknowledged and documented in this way. You know, as I mentioned earlier, some of them are often operating out of the spotlight. Not that they're seeking the spotlight, but I'm sure they appreciate the acknowledgement of what the work that they do and how positive it is.
Well, can I tell you this? Trying to get this anthology together was like pulling teeth. The reluctance of individuals to come forward and speak about their experience. One, confidentiality. Secondly, they were not necessarily looking for acolytes. Thirdly, they didn't have the time. They were so busy all the time. Most people, the majority of people working on the front line are altruistic, are vocational, not necessarily religious or otherwise, but they're very caring people. And in a society today, which is quite worrying, what's happening world-wise, it's wonderful that there are people, caring people, working on the ground. Myself, I worked as a social worker for 40 years. I'm still working in the field. And it can be quite stressful and brutalising. But however, your colleagues, you meet some of the finest people you would ever meet. Social workers, Garda, nurses, doctors, who are not necessarily out to a big into competition. You don't see many rich on the ground outreach workers or social workers or counsellors or indeed Garda.
Yeah, but they want to make a positive difference to vulnerable people and make a positive difference in their community. And look, as you said, it was like pulling teeth getting the stories for this collection together, but they deserve the spotlight, even if they're reluctant to seek it. The collection is called Frontline Voices. It's been launched in Limerick City Hall on the 15th of January. Michael Lacey, chairperson chairperson of Midwestern Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum. Thank you for telling us more about that on this morning's show.
And thank you for having me. Okay.
Take care. That's Michael Lacey with us on Morning Focus. We're going to be hearing about an interesting talk coming up as part of Clare Museum's lecture series in just a little bit after some music from the Zombies.
It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time, give it to me easy and let me try with pleasured hands to take you in the sun to promised lands, to show you everyone. It's the time of the season for loving. What's your name? Who's your daddy? Is he rich like me? Has he taken any time to show you what you need to live? Tell it to me slowly. Tell you why I really want to know. It's the time of the season for loving. What's your name? Who's your daddy? Is he rich like me? Has he taken any time to show you what you need to live? Tell it to me slowly. Tell you why I really want to know. It's the time of the season for loving.
Message in here on 086 1800 964 in relation to my chat at the top of the show with councillors John Crowe, Michael Begley and Pádraig McCormick from the local authority in relation to that story report you're hearing about as I say earlier on in the show, and also in our news bulletins, that Clare County Council needs to increase its social housing stock by almost 60%. That's 50% or 58% in order to meet current demand. The three gents join me on that earlier on in the show, and you're hearing about it in our news bulletins. And one of the issues that came up that was raised by all three was downsizing and the difficulties in downsizing, even for those who want, as Michael Begley mentioned, he could think of at least 6 people in his area who would quite happily downsize. And a listener here's message to say in Scariff and Tuamgraney, social housing has increased hugely in the past 2 years, which is great, but there are absolutely no private housing estates being built for couples and families over social housing income limits to buy. There are many older people also who would love to downsize into town, but again, no private houses to buy. Keep your messages coming in, be it in relation to that or any other matters. It's 086 1800 964 to send us a message via text or WhatsApp. Now, Clare Museum's lecture series will present a talk by Bryn, Coldrick and Tom Cassidy. It's called The Forgotten Defenders, Pillboxes of the Shannon Estuary. It's going to be happening next Wednesday, the 14th of January from 7:30. And to find out more about it, Bryn Coldrick, Senior Consultant with Archaeological Management Solutions based in Kilrush, is with us. Bryn, thank you for joining me on Morning Focus.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
For listeners who may not know, what exactly are pillboxes and why are they significant?
Pillboxes, people may have seen them in the landscape, in fields, maybe along roadsides. They're small concrete boxes, and they usually have a narrow opening either along the sides or in the corners that soldiers who are defending the road or bridge or whatever it might be could look out to basically see if anyone was coming to attack them during the Second World War, had we been invaded.
Okay, so these date back to World War II. I guess a period we don't always associate strongly with Ireland. We can bring neutrality into that, or as we refer to it, the World War II, the emergency. What role did the Shannon Estuary play at that time?
Well, it was a strategic location. I mean, had we been invaded, the most likely locations for a seaborne invasion were Cork Harbour or the Shannon Estuary. So the Shannon Estuary was navigable for about 50 miles. So if a German fleet had shown up, they would have used the estuary to basically invade the country. You also had the Foyne Seaplane Base, of course, which was the busiest seaplane base in the world at the time. We had Rhinana Airfield, which is now Shannon Airport. You had Ardnacrusha on the other side of Limerick, and then of course you had the population centres of Ennis and Limerick and places like that. So it was a key strategic location that we had to defend.
For yourselves, I mean, the work combines archaeological investigation, built heritage studies, historical research, community engagement. In practice, did that involve a lot of rolling up sleeves? Was there a lot of work that's gone into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my colleagues in AMS, we've done built heritage surveys. So we've been photographing, we've been measuring, recording the pillboxes on the scheme and other structures as well, of course. We've also done some test excavations around the bases of the pillboxes just to see what sort of foundation they're on, how thick they are, how sturdy they are. We've been doing other things like mapping them, laser scanners, to create digital models. And then myself and Tom have been doing historical research up in the military archives as well.
The investigations were initiated as part of the Foynes to Limerick Road and Adair Bypass project. I just wonder, Bryn, how often major infrastructure projects lead to discoveries such as these?
Well, I mean, every major infrastructure project in the country, particularly TII projects, they encounter archaeological remains. It gives us a great opportunity to discover things, to find out the information which we can then get into the public domain. So they're very important in that respect. Pillboxes, however, don't turn up very often on these schemes. What we found is very few are actually recorded across the country. I mean, there are some in locations like the Boyne Valley, for example, and the Curragh and around the coast. But by and large, we don't get to deal with these very often. So it's been very exciting for us.
Yeah, and as I say, things like discoveries like this can turn up as part of major infrastructure projects, but also I'd imagine community engagement plays a key part, Bryn, be it in telling you the location of a pillbox, or perhaps those in the community who had family members who may have worked in connection with them, built them or manned them, can pass on vital information too.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. I mean, nobody knows their own areas better than people who've lived there for generations, and that's something that we're always encountering every day. So on this particular scheme, we've had 10 previously unrecorded pillboxes reported by the community, so that's about a third of the ones that we know about in the Askeaton area. So it's been crucial. We've also had people coming up and sharing photographs of their parents and grandparents who were in the LDF, the local defence force, and would have manned these pillboxes, had that been required. Also, a shout out to a man called Mike McCarthy, who is using drones and thermal imagery to actually discover some of the pillboxes, and then passing that information on to us as well through TII. So, yeah, huge shout out to the local community. They're absolutely essential in this. Yeah. And
these pillboxes, what? Because they are, the bones of 80 years old. What condition are they generally in? Are they facing any threats? Have some of them deteriorated significantly, or are they all fairly in good nick?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, I mean they were built to withstand machine gun fire and small arms fire, and maybe mortars and things like that. So they were pretty strong, pretty sturdy. So most of the ones that we come across, are in very good condition. Some of them were hidden in hedgerows. The hedgerows grew around them since that time. And one was actually discovered as part of this project. When we were clearing back the hedgerows. In very good condition. Like I said, they're very sturdy. Some were removed previously. Which is sort of, typical. I suppose one of the things that we want to highlight is, the vulnerability, I suppose, of some of these, particularly ones around the coast. If you're anywhere near beaches, you get coastal erosion and things like that. Obviously, climate change is going to play a factor in the future as well, So I guess one of the reasons we want to highlight the significance and the interest surrounding these structures is to protect them for future generations.
And how important is it that because they're not formally protected, that they are protected, but also that they're recorded and understood?
Well, indeed, it is, obviously, to be fair, I suppose I need to give a shout out to Tom, who was the former Architectural Conservation Officer with Limerick City and County Council, and he encouraged the council to add a number of these pillboxes to their record of protected structures. So some of them are formally protected, which is fantastic. Obviously, we'd like to see them all protected for future generations, because we don't really have a huge amount of World War II defence infrastructure built heritage in this country. So, what we do have, I think, is very important to protect, because they're a tangible record of the past. You can literally, as Tom would say, put your hand on it and feel history, So and that's always very important, I think, for people.
Well, look, people can hear yourself and Tom presenting this lecture, this talk. It's called The Forgotten Defenders, Pillboxes of the Shannon Estuary. It'll be happening at the Clare Museum as part of their lecture series next Wednesday, the 14th, from 7:30. Bryn, Coldrick, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you'll yourself and Tom will receive a good turnout for that talk. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's Bryn Coldrick there, Senior Consultant with AMS, Archaeological Management Solutions, based in Kilrush.